It would be hard to pick a number at which one could say that the Parti Québécois has a mandate to push for a referendum. If they manage to win a majority government, then it's going to be up to them and up to their leader to decide if they're going to go ahead with a referendum or not. But how strong do you need to be to really have a clear mandate? Obviously, if the PQ were to win the majority of the vote going in, then it would be a lot easier for them to say, we have a clear mandate to hold a referendum. So a lot remains to be written over what this will mean come election day. How much will the referendum be part of the campaign? We can think it's going to be a big part for sure, but what's going to happen during the campaign? Will the PQ end up at 32 or at 42? Is 42 enough relative to 32? Is definitely a lot better, but can we say it's a clear mandate? Depends on who you ask. I'm sure a lot of people would say yes, others would say no, you would need majority support. So it's a tricky one to answer. There's no clear answer, but I'm sure for Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, he would prefer to see the numbers rise up to 38, 40, 42% to really create momentum going into what could be a new campaign for a referendum. The challenge for the Parti Québécois right now is that the numbers in terms of support for sovereignty have been plateauing for a while. They haven't really moved in line with support for the party. Right now, they're about at the same level, but for the longest time, what we have noticed is that there's a kind of a significant proportion of PQ voters who are not favorable towards sovereignty. And some of the sovereigntists who say that they're favorable towards the idea of having a referendum, holding a referendum, or that they would vote in favor, are sitting in other parties' backyards right now. They intend to vote for other parties. So what remains to be seen is to what extent can the PQ bring those voters back into the PQ fold and still try to keep some of the voters who were saying, I don't want a referendum and I'm not favorable towards sovereignty, but I would consider voting the PQ for the PQ. So those are obviously voters who are saying, I would trust the PQ to form the government, but I don't want to take the extra step, which is a referendum on sovereignty and sovereignty itself. So it's a very interesting situation, and it will be fascinating as a pollster, but also I think as a citizen watching what's going to happen over the next year, as Quebecers for the first time in 30 years will have to seriously consider what they think of the idea of Quebec becoming a country. Quebecers haven't had to do this in a long time now. In the 80s, 90s, it was a recurrent question, and voters had a pretty good idea of where they stood, and especially a pretty good idea of who was favorable or unfavorable to the option and what terms. A lot of this will be new for roughly half of the voters who've never had to seriously consider that question. So there could be a lot of movement between now and next year.